The story. Part 1. The Awakening. The first thing Marcus Whitmore noticed was the beeping. Steady, rhythmic, mechanical. His eyelids felt like they were made of lead, but he forced them open anyway. White ceiling tiles. Fluorescent lights. The sharp smell of disinfectant. A hospital. His mouth was dry, his thoughts sluggish, moving through his mind like honey through a sieve. He tried to sit up, but pain lanced through his abdomen, forcing him back down with a gasp. Mr. Whitmore. A woman's voice, calm and professional. A nurse appeared at his bedside, her face kind but concerned. Don't try to move. You're in St. Catherine's Hospital. You've been here for 3 days. 3 days. His voice came out as a croak. What happened? The nurse checked his forehead, her eyes avoiding his. The doctor will be in shortly to explain everything. I'm just glad you're awake. We weren't sure you would be. Before Marcus could ask what she meant by that, she hurried out of the room. He stared at the ceiling, trying to piece together his last memories. He'd been at home. It was evening. Victoria had made dinner. She rarely cooked, but she'd insisted. Said she wanted to do something special for their 5th anniversary. The memory stopped there, like a film reel that had been cut. The door opened again, and this time 2 people entered. The first was a man in his 50s wearing a white coat, his expression professionally neutral. The second was a woman in a dark pantsuit, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the room. Mr. Whitmore, I'm Dr. Patterson, the man said. This is Detective Sarah Chen. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, Marcus said. What happened to me? Dr. Patterson and Detective Chen exchanged a glance. The detective stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, you were poisoned. Specifically, with a combination of digoxin and arsenic. If your housekeeper hadn't found you when she did and called 911, you wouldn't have survived the night. Poisoned. The word hung in the air like smoke. But who would? Marcus began, then stopped as the implication sank in. He'd been at home. At dinner. With Victoria. Detective Chen's face softened slightly. Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but we have evidence that suggests your wife, Victoria Whitmore, was responsible for administering the poison. The room seemed to tilt. That's impossible. Victoria would never. We found the poison in a bottle of wine in your home kitchen, Detective Chen interrupted gently. The wine was from a case that only you and your wife had access to. We also found searches on her laptop for the specific poisons used, along with searches about your life insurance policy and the terms of your will. Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. Where is she? Where's Victoria? She's been taken in for questioning. Mr. Whitmore, I know this is a shock, but there's more you need to know. Detective Chen pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. Your wife has been having an affair with a man named Derek Hammond. He's a personal trainer at the gym she frequents. We believe they planned this together. Your death would leave your entire fortune to Victoria, approximately $47 million. $47 million. The number Marcus had worked 15 years to accumulate, building his software company from nothing. And Victoria, the woman he'd loved, trusted, married, she tried to take it all by taking his life. I want to see her, Marcus said, his voice hard. I want to hear her say it to my face. That's not advisable right now, Detective Chen said. But I can tell you she's denied everything. Claims she had no idea the wine was poisoned. Suggests maybe you had enemies from your business dealings. Bullshit, Marcus spat. My business is software development, not the mafia. Dr. Patterson stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, I need to stress that you're not out of danger yet. The poison did significant damage to your organs. You'll need to stay here for at least another week, possibly longer. Marcus barely heard him. His mind was racing through the past months, looking for signs he'd missed. Victoria's sudden interest in working out, her late nights at book club, the way she'd been so focused on getting him to update his will last month. It had all been there. He'd just been too blind to see it. Part 2. The Investigation. Over the next 2 days, as Marcus's physical strength slowly returned, Detective Chen became a regular visitor. She brought him updates, and in return, he told her everything he knew about Victoria and her activities over the past 6 months. She started going to that gym in March, Marcus said, sitting up in bed now with less pain. Said she wanted to get in shape. I thought it was great, encouraged it even. I guess that's when she met Derek. Detective Chen nodded, making notes. Derek Hammond. 28 years old, personal trainer, has a record for petty theft and fraud from when he was younger. We brought him in for questioning yesterday. And? He confessed to the affair but denies any knowledge of the poisoning. Says Victoria never mentioned anything about wanting you dead, claims they were just sleeping together. Do you believe him? Detective Chen's expression was carefully neutral. I believe he's smart enough to save his own skin. But here's what's interesting. We found text messages between them that were deleted from both phones. Our tech team recovered them. They don't explicitly discuss murder, but there are some concerning conversations. She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a screenshot. Victoria, how much longer can you wait for us to really be together? Derek, as long as it takes, babe. We just need to be smart about this. Victoria, what if we didn't have to wait? What if there was a way to speed things up? Derek, don't do anything stupid. Divorce is expensive but it's legal. Victoria, divorce would give me half. I want it all. Marcus felt sick. To see it spelled out so coldly, his wife discussing his elimination like a business transaction. There's more, Detective Chen said. We checked Victoria's financial records. 3 weeks ago, she took out a $200,000 loan using property she owned before your marriage as collateral. The money went to a private account we haven't been able to trace yet. What would she need $200,000 for? That's what we are trying to figure out. But Mr. Whitmore, I have to ask, did you have any prenuptial agreement with Victoria? No, Marcus admitted. I was in love. It seemed unromantic. Stupid, I know. Not stupid. Human. Detective Chen closed her notebook. We are building a strong case, but I'll be honest with you, it's mostly circumstantial. The searches on her computer, the affair, the text messages, the loan. It all points to motive and opportunity, but a good defense attorney might be able to create reasonable doubt. What we really need is something more concrete. Marcus stared out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably with her lawyer, planning her defense, spinning her story. The woman who'd slept beside him for 5 years, who'd kissed him goodbye every morning, who'd whispered that she loved him in the dark, that woman had tried to murder him. What can I do? He asked. Detective Chen studied him for a long moment. Right now? Get better. Let us do our job. But Mr. Whitmore, I have to warn you, Victoria made bail this morning. Her father put up his house. The news hit Marcus like a physical blow. She's out? She tried to kill me and she's just out. With an ankle monitor and a restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of you. But yes, she's out. It's the system, Mr. Whitmore. Innocent until proven guilty. After Detective Chen left, Marcus sat alone with his rage and betrayal. But beneath those emotions, another feeling was beginning to take root. The cold, calculating determination that had built his fortune in the first place. If Victoria wanted to play games, he'd show her what a real player looked like. Part 3, the game begins. Marcus was released from the hospital a week later. He went not to his home, that place was tainted now, but to a luxury apartment his company kept for visiting executives. Detective Chen had advised him that his house was still being processed as a crime scene anyway. The first thing he did was call his lawyer, Richard Stern, who'd been representing him and his business for 12 years. Marcus, thank God you're all right, Richard said when he answered. I heard what happened. I can't believe it. Believe it, Marcus said flatly. Richard, I need you to freeze every joint account I have with Victoria. I also want to revoke her access to the company shares I'd gifted her, if that's legally possible. Already done, Richard replied. I filed an emergency motion the day after the poisoning. Given the circumstances, the judge agreed. Victoria currently has access to none of your assets. Good. What about the investigation? Detective Chen has been keeping me updated. The case is strong but not airtight. Victoria's attorney, James Blackwood, is one of the best defense lawyers in the state. He's already started planting seeds of doubt, suggesting you have business enemies, that maybe Victoria was framed, that the affair doesn't prove attempted murder. Marcus clenched his jaw. She did it, Richard. I know she did. I believe you. But belief isn't evidence. What we need is for Victoria or Derek to make a mistake. After he hung up with Richard, Marcus sat in the unfamiliar apartment, thinking. Victoria was smart. She'd proven that by getting away with the affair for months before trying to kill him. She wouldn't make an obvious mistake. Unless he gave her a reason to. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marcus, please. We need to talk. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. I love you. I would never hurt you. Please give me a chance to explain. V. Marcus stared at the message. The restraining order said she couldn't contact him. She was already violating it, which showed how desperate she was. He typed back, my lawyer will contact yours. Don't text me again. But even as he sent it, an idea was forming. Victoria was desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. Over the next few days, Marcus worked with Detective Chen on a plan. It was risky, possibly illegal depending on how it was executed, but Chen thought it could work. We need her to confess, Chen explained during one of their meetings. Or we need Derek to turn on her. Right now, they're both sticking to their stories, just an affair, no murder plot. What if I could get her to slip up? Marcus asked. What if I could arrange a meeting? The restraining order could be temporarily lifted if I request it. I could say I want closure, that I'm willing to hear her side. We wire me up, record everything she says. Detective Chen frowned. It's risky. If she lawyers up or refuses to talk without Blackwood present, we get nothing. And if she's truly smart, she won't confess to anything even if you do meet. But if she thinks she can manipulate me, if she thinks there's a chance I still love her enough to forgive her. Marcus let the sentence hang. Chen considered it. I'd have to clear it with the district attorney. And Marcus, you'd be putting yourself in a room with someone who tried to kill you once already. I'm aware of the irony, Marcus said dryly. But I need to face her. I need to hear her try to explain it. 3 days later, the meeting was arranged. Marcus had petitioned to have the restraining order temporarily suspended for a single, supervised meeting at his lawyer's office. Victoria's attorney had surprisingly agreed, perhaps thinking his client could use her charm to somehow salvage the situation. Marcus arrived at Richard's office early. Detective Chen was there, along with a technician who fitted Marcus with a wire so thin it was virtually invisible under his shirt. Remember, Chen instructed, try to get her to talk about the poisoning, about her plans with Derek. The more specific details she admits to, the better. What if she doesn't take the bait? Then we keep building the circumstantial case. But Marcus, be careful. Don't push too hard or she'll realize what you're doing. At exactly 2 p.m., Victoria arrived with James Blackwood. Marcus's breath caught when he saw her. She looked pale and thinner than she'd been 3 weeks ago, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was dressed modestly, nothing like her usual designer wardrobe. Playing the part of the wronged wife, Marcus thought bitterly. When their eyes met, Victoria's filled with tears. Marcus, she breathed. Let's sit down, Richard said calmly, gesturing to the conference table. They arranged themselves on opposite sides of the table, Marcus and Richard on one side, Victoria and Blackwood on the other. Detective Chen observed from a chair in the corner, officially present to ensure no violations of the restraining order occurred. Marcus, Victoria began, her voice trembling, I know how this looks. I know what they are saying. But you have to believe me, I didn't do this. I would never hurt you. Then explain the searches on your computer, Marcus said, keeping his voice level. Explain the texts with Derek about wanting it all. Victoria's eyes darted to her lawyer, who gave her a small nod. The searches, I was reading a mystery novel. The detective in it uses those same poisons. I was curious about whether they were real. And the texts with Derek. She took a shaky breath. I was talking about being able to be with him openly, after we got divorced. I was going to ask you for a divorce, Marcus. That's all. You were having an affair and planning to ask me for a divorce, Marcus repeated. And you think that makes you look innocent? I'm not proud of the affair, Victoria said, and now the tears spilled down her cheeks. I made a terrible mistake. But Marcus, we'd grown apart. You were always working, always focused on the company. I felt lonely. Derek paid attention to me. It was wrong, but it wasn't murder. It was a good performance, Marcus had to admit. If he hadn't been lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life, he might have even felt a twinge of sympathy. "What about the $200,000? He asked. Victoria blinked. "What?" "The loan you took out 3 weeks before you tried to kill me. Where did that money go?" Her face went pale, genuinely pale, not performance pale. She looked at Blackwood, who frowned. "My client doesn't have to answer," Blackwood began. "It's okay," Victoria interrupted. "Marcus deserves to know." She turned back to him. "I was planning to leave you. The money was for a fresh start, a new apartment, legal fees for the divorce, something to live on until the settlement came through. I knew divorce would take months, maybe years, and I didn't want to be dependent on you during that time." "So you admit you were planning to leave me for Derek," Marcus said. "I was planning to leave," Victoria corrected. "Not necessarily for Derek. For myself." Marcus leaned forward. "Victoria, did you poison me?" Her eyes widened. "No. Marcus, no. I swear on everything." "Did you and Derek plan this together?" "No. Derek didn't even know I was thinking about divorce until last week. He's not. This isn't what you think." "Then who poisoned me, Victoria?" "Because the police found the poison in wine that only you and I had access to. In our home. In our kitchen." Victoria's composure was cracking. "I don't know. Maybe someone broke in. Maybe someone is framing me. Marcus, I know this sounds crazy, but what if someone wanted to get rid of both of us? You'd be dead, and I'd go to prison for it." It was a desperate theory, but Marcus saw how Detective Chen's expression shifted slightly in his peripheral vision. There was something there, some flicker of interest. "Who would want that?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Victoria said, but her eyes were darting around now, like she was trying to solve a puzzle in her head. "Your business partner maybe? Someone from your past?" Marcus shook his head. "You're grasping at straws." "I'm trying to find the truth." Victoria's voice rose. "Marcus, I loved you. I still love you, even after everything. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I had an affair. But I did not try to kill you. You have to believe me." The meeting ended 20 minutes later with nothing useful captured on the wire. Victoria had stuck to her story: affair yes, murder no. As she left with Blackwood, she looked back at Marcus one last time, and he saw something in her eyes he couldn't quite identify. Fear? Guilt? Or something else entirely? Part 4, The Twist. 2 days after the meeting, Detective Chen called Marcus with urgent news. "We need to meet," she said. "Now. Come to the station." When Marcus arrived, Chen led him to an interrogation room where Derek Hammond sat, looking terrified. "Mr. Hammond has decided to revise his statement," Chen said coldly. Derek looked up at Marcus with haunted eyes. "I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "Know what?" Marcus demanded. Derek swallowed hard. "Victoria told me 3 days ago that she was going to kill herself. She said the case was too strong, that she was going to prison anyway, and she couldn't handle it. I went to her apartment to try to talk her out of it." "And?" Chen prompted. "And I found documents. She'd left them out on her kitchen table. I don't think she meant for me to see them. But they were there, and I..." Derek's voice cracked. "She was planning everything. Not just your death, Marcus. The whole thing. But it wasn't the way the police thought." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean?" Detective Chen placed a folder on the table and opened it. Inside were photocopies of documents, bank statements, emails, even handwritten notes. "Victoria did take out that $200,000 loan," Chen explained. "But we finally tracked where the money went. Derek, why don't you tell Mr. Whitmore what you discovered?" Derek took a shaky breath. "The money went to a man named Thomas Reeves. He's a chemist who was fired from a pharmaceutical company 2 years ago for stealing research materials. Victoria hired him to create the poison, specifically to make sure it would look like someone with medical knowledge did it, not her." Marcus stared at the documents. "She hired someone to make the poison?" "It gets worse," Chen said. "We brought in Thomas Reeves last night. He's cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. According to him, Victoria didn't just plan to poison you. She planned something much more elaborate. Chen pulled out another document, a printed email. This is from Victoria to Reeves, sent from an encrypted email account. Read it. Marcus read, and with each word, his blood ran colder. The poison needs to be slow-acting enough that it won't be immediately obvious, but fast enough that he'll be clearly dying when found. I need him alive when they find him, that's crucial. When they trace it back to me, and they will, I need to have already established that someone is trying to frame me. The Derek affair is perfect for this. It makes me look guilty but not too guilty. No one stupid enough to have an affair and leave that kind of digital trail would actually commit murder. I need reasonable doubt. And then, when the trial happens and I'm acquitted, everything goes forward. The email ended there, but Marcus's hands were shaking as he held it. There's more, Chen said quietly. We found her real plan. She laid out more documents. Bank records showing Victoria had been secretly moving money for months. A burner phone with text to a contact saved as MB discussing what happens after the trial. Most damning of all, a handwritten note in Victoria's handwriting. Phase 1. Poison M. Make sure he survives. Dead husband is inheritance, but living husband who everyone thinks I tried to kill is worth so much more. Phase 2. Get arrested. Make case strong enough to go to trial but weak enough to create doubt. Phase 3. Acquittal. Double jeopardy means can never be tried again. Phase 4. MB finishes the job properly. Second attempt blamed on real killer. Proves I was innocent all along. Inherit everything. Phase 5. Life with Derek, or whoever, on $47 million. Marcus felt like he'd been punched. She planned to be found innocent, then have someone else kill me? Someone who could be blamed for the first attempt too. MB stands for Michael Brandt, Detective Chen said. He's a former private investigator Victoria hired last year, supposedly to look into some business competitors of yours. We've had him under surveillance since finding these documents. Last night, he bought a gun. The room spun. It was so much worse than Marcus had thought. Victoria hadn't just tried to kill him once. She'd planned to get away with trying to kill him, establish her innocence, and then actually kill him, framing someone else in the process and inheriting his fortune with no suspicion on her at all. How did you find all this? Marcus asked. Derek spoke up again. When I found those documents at Victoria's apartment, I panicked. I knew if this came out, I'd look like I was part of it. So I called Detective Chen and told her everything, showed her where Victoria kept her real records. She'd been hiding them in a storage unit under a fake name. Detective Chen nodded. We got a warrant, searched the unit, and found everything. The encrypted emails, the handwritten notes, payment records to Thomas Reeves and Michael Brandt. It's all there. Victoria thought she was being clever, making herself look guilty enough to be arrested, but not guilty enough to be convicted. Then, after her acquittal, she'd be untouchable because of double jeopardy. But she made one mistake, Marcus said slowly, his mind working through it. She documented everything. Criminals often do, Chen replied. They think they need to keep records to keep track of their plans, to remember what lies they've told. But those records always become their downfall. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we arrest her again, this time with enough evidence for conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, and attempted murder. With Thomas Reeves and Michael Brandt both willing to testify against her, there's no way she walks. We are talking life in prison, minimum. Marcus sat back in his chair, trying to process it all. Victoria hadn't just betrayed him. She'd constructed an elaborate scheme to murder him while making sure she'd get away with it. She'd manipulated Derek, hired criminals, and been willing to put Marcus through a near-death experience just as a setup for the real killing blow later. There's one thing I don't understand, Marcus said. Why keep Derek in the dark? Why not have him help? Derek answered. Because I was supposed to be her alibi of innocence. The boyfriend who didn't know anything, who could testify that she never mentioned murder. Just another thing that made her look not quite smart enough to pull off the real crime. His voice was bitter. I was a patsy, just like you. Part 5, Justice. Victoria's second arrest happened at dawn. Marcus wasn't there for it. Detective Chen had advised against it, but she sent him photos taken by the surveillance team. Victoria being led out of her apartment in handcuffs, her face no longer showing the careful mask of the wronged wife, but raw fury. The trial took 9 months to prepare and 3 weeks to complete. Marcus attended every day, sitting in the gallery and watching as the prosecution systematically dismantled Victoria's defense. Thomas Reeves testified about how Victoria had contacted him through dark web channels, offering $50,000 for a poison that would nearly kill someone but allow them to be saved. She was very specific, Reeves said on the stand. She wanted it to look amateurish, like someone had gotten the dosage wrong. She wanted the victim to survive. Michael Brandt, the private investigator turned hitman, testified that Victoria had approached him 2 months before the poisoning. She said she needed someone taken care of, but that the timing had to be very specific. It had to be after she'd been tried and acquitted for a first attempt. She said that way, when he actually died, people would think she'd been framed all along. Derek Hammond testified too, explaining his role as the unwitting accomplice, the affair that was supposed to make Victoria look guilty but not too guilty. But the most damning evidence came from Victoria's own documents. The prosecutor displayed her handwritten plans on a screen, walking the jury through each phase of her scheme. This wasn't a crime of passion, the prosecutor argued in his closing statement. This wasn't even a simple murder for money. This was a woman who planned not just to kill her husband, but to game the legal system itself. She wanted to be tried and acquitted so she could never be tried again, giving her free rein to finish what she started. She weaponized the very laws meant to protect the innocent. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous on all counts, guilty. At sentencing, the judge showed no mercy. Mrs. Whitmore, I have been on this bench for 23 years, and I have never seen such calculated cruelty, Judge Martinez said. You didn't just try to kill your husband, you tortured him first by forcing him to survive and go through the trauma of knowing his wife tried to murder him. You manipulated multiple people. You corrupted our justice system by trying to use double jeopardy as a shield for murder. You represent everything wrong with greed and narcissism in our society. Victoria stood stoically as she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led out of the courtroom, she passed close to where Marcus sat. She stopped, forcing the bailiffs to pause, and looked directly at him. You were supposed to die in that hospital bed, she said coldly, all pretense of the loving wife gone. Everything would have worked if you just died when you were supposed to. But I didn't, Marcus replied calmly. And neither did your plan. Victoria laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think you won? You're going to spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if everyone you meet is after your money. You're going to be alone, Marcus. Just like you always were, even when you had me. Better alone than dead, Marcus said. As Victoria was led away, Detective Chen approached Marcus. How are you holding up? She asked. Marcus considered the question. I've been better. But I've also been worse, specifically, when I was dying of poison in my own home. Chen smiled slightly. Fair point. For what it's worth, you helped build a case that will be taught in law schools. The audacity of what she tried to do. Is there a point where audacity becomes stupidity? Marcus asked. She was so focused on being clever that she forgot the basics, like not documenting your criminal conspiracy. Pride, Chen said. It's what gets them all in the end. They think they're smarter than everyone else, and that makes them careless. After the sentencing, Marcus stood outside the courthouse, taking in the fresh air. His lawyer, Richard, came up beside him. It's over, Richard said. You can move on now. Can I? Marcus asked. My wife tried to murder me, Richard. How do you move on from that? One day at a time, Richard replied. And by building something better. You've been given a second chance that many people don't get. Use it. Epilogue, 6 months later. Marcus sold his company 6 months after Victoria's conviction. He'd realized during the trial that the fortune he'd built, the $47 million that Victoria had wanted so badly, meant nothing if you had no one to share your life with. But more than that, he'd realized he didn't want to be the person he'd been. Victoria had been right about one thing. He had been absent in their marriage, always working, always focused on building more wealth. He'd given her no excuse for what she'd done, but he'd also given her no reason to stay. He took half the money from the company sale and established a foundation to help survivors of domestic violence, because that's what he'd realized. A victim of domestic violence who happened to be male and wealthy, which somehow made people take it less seriously. The other half he invested conservatively, giving himself the freedom to figure out what he actually wanted from life. He never saw Victoria again. Occasionally, he'd hear that she'd given an interview from prison, still maintaining that she'd been framed despite the overwhelming evidence. She'd become something of a minor celebrity among true crime enthusiasts, her case discussed in podcasts and YouTube videos. Marcus tried not to think about her. Instead, he focused on the present and the future. He met someone new, a woman named Sarah who worked as a veterinarian and had never heard of him or his case when they met at a dog park. They took things slow. Very slow. Marcus saw a therapist twice a week to work through his trust issues. Do you think you'll ever really trust someone again? Sarah asked him one evening as they sat on his apartment balcony, watching the sunset. Marcus thought about it. I think so, he said finally. Because the alternative is living the rest of my life in fear, and that means Victoria wins. She took enough from me. She doesn't get to take my future too. Sarah squeezed his hand. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. Most people would have become bitter and cynical. Oh, I did, Marcus admitted with a wry smile. For about 6 months. But bitterness is exhausting. At some point, you have to choose to believe in people again, even knowing what they are capable of. That night, Marcus had a dream. He was back in the hospital bed, machines beeping around him, but this time when he opened his eyes, Victoria was standing over him. You should have died, Dream Victoria said. It would have been easier for everyone. But I didn't, Dream Marcus replied. I lived. And I'm going to keep living. He woke with a start, his heart pounding. But as he lay in the dark, catching his breath, Marcus realized the dream had felt different from the nightmares he'd had before. This time, he'd felt powerful in it. In control. He was healing. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. The next morning, Marcus got a call from Detective Chen, who'd become something of a friend over the past year. Thought you'd want to know, she said. Michael Brandt was sentenced yesterday. 25 years. Thomas Reeves got 15. Everyone involved in Victoria's scheme is now behind bars. Good, Marcus said. They deserve it. They do, Chen agreed. Marcus, I wanted to tell you, I've been doing this job for 16 years, and I've seen a lot of victims. A lot of them let what happened define them, let it turn them into someone bitter and angry. But you've handled this with real grace. I'm impressed. I had good teachers, Marcus said. And good friends. After they hung up, Marcus looked around his apartment, the one he'd moved to after leaving the hospital, the one that had no memories of Victoria or their life together. He'd thought of it as temporary when he'd first moved in, a place to hide while he healed. But now, with Sarah's coffee mug on the kitchen counter and photos from their recent hiking trip on the refrigerator, it felt like something else. It felt like home. Marcus Whitmore had been given a second chance at life. He'd learned that money couldn't buy loyalty, that love could be faked, and that the people closest to you could harbor the darkest intentions. But he'd also learned that survival was possible. That trust could be rebuilt. That happiness wasn't something that happened to you, it was something you chose, again and again, every single day. And as he stood in his kitchen, making breakfast and planning a day that held no fear, no paranoia, no shadows, Marcus made that choice. He chose to live. The end.